Ladies and gentlemen, this is Scott Pollack, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Welcome to another edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report. Thanks again for tuning us in, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate it. This edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report is coming to you live or almost live from the capital of the Midwest Coast, Chicago, Illinois, USA. This is part 8 of the Definitive Bullet Point series regarding the mass shootings at the Mandalay Bay.
I want to talk a little bit about the court cases. I talked about the probate court case that was filed in November because the mother was the next in line to inherit because Stephen didn't have a will. She basically waived her right to the inheritance, and so there had been some lawsuits filed against the estate of Stephen Paddock at that point in time. And when his mother indicated that she would waive her claim to the estate and wanted that to be given to the victims, then the attorney Alice Denton, who is representing the CPA, who is in charge of taking an inventory of the assets, she indicated that there had been discussions with the attorneys who had filed suit against the estate to drop the lawsuits in order to save money for the estate, because if they filed suits, the estate then would have to hire attorneys, and some of the value of the estate would be depleted based on the fact that they would have to hire attorneys to defend the estate. So what they ended up doing was they ended up talking all those people into dismissing their case or not filing. They moved the case from probate to district court, which is like state court. They appointed a guy by the name of Birch, a CPA, to inventory the assets. So they had a court hearing on the end of January or end of June, and Alice Denton, the attorney, and Birch were in there in front of the judge, and they basically said that they had sent subpoenas. The judge wanted a status. She wanted a progress report, and they had indicated that they had sent subpoenas to. They were aware of 2 bank accounts, one at Wells Fargo, one at Nevada State Bank. They had sent subpoenas to them. They had gotten no response from the banks, other than Wells Fargo indicated that the reason they weren't going to respond is because the bank account was closed. So I don't know who closed that account. Obviously, it wasn't Stephen Paddock, but that account the Wells Fargo account was closed. Alice Denton indicated that they had reason to believe that there was $80,000 or $85,000 in that account. She didn't say anything about the Nevada State Bank account as far as any information about how much money was there. Then the judge asked about any other accounts, any investment accounts, savings accounts, retirement accounts. And that's when Alice Denton indicated that they had sent a subpoena to the FBI because the FBI early on had executed search warrants at both properties. They had gone in and they had confiscated computers, files, documents, everything related to anything as far as personal effects goes. and they had gone to the FBI to try to get the information, and the FBI had told them that they couldn't give them couldn't release the information to them because they were in a grand jury session, and that if they wanted to get the information, they would have to get approval from the Attorney General. And this is what Alice Denton said in the court hearing. Now, I don't know whether she meant that the local Attorney General for federal court in Nevada was the one that had to approve it, or whether it was Attorney General Jeff Sessions, but that's what she indicated in court. So the interesting part about all of that is that if you go back and you read media reports, initially they said, well, Stephen Paddock, this guy's a multimillionaire. His estate's worth $5 million. Well, then as time goes on, they lowered that estimate to between 1 and 5 million. And then now currently the experts, and they don't quote these people. We don't know who these experts are. We don't know who these people are that are giving these estimates. They're never cited or they're never named. But anyway, now the experts are saying, well, maybe we're not going to get much more out of his estate than what the value of the two houses are, which they've been appraised, and I think they were appraised at, both of them were appraised at around the same amount, which is $350,000, give or take. So you're looking at about $750,000 for those two houses. Now, Birch had indicated to the judge that he would like to get in and get some personal belongings and see if they could sell those. I don't know, furniture, some of the guns, some of his personal belongings. I don't know where that stands yet because they haven't had another court hearing. But anyway, that's where it's ending up. Now, we're aware that there are other assets out there. I mean, this guy was he's a multimillionaire. He had other assets. He was involved in other projects. He was involved in other real estate ventures to this day. And we know where they are. We know who the partners are. And so they're not going after that, it doesn't appear. And it appears as if they're trying to fast track this through so they can get it finished, get the money distributed to the victims of the paltry sum that it will end up being, and then, go on down the road, nothing to see here, move along. Now, recently, in the past week, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, and this has caused a huge, huge, huge issue with everybody, and it actually has hit the national media radar, surprisingly enough. But Mandalay Bay, MGM Resorts, has filed suit in federal court against the victims. I mean, I've never heard of this. I'm sure it's probably, whenever there's attorneys involved, I'm sure they've probably tried this ploy before, but I've never heard that they have. But anyway, what they've done is they've sued the victims in federal court. They've cited protection under the Safety Act of 2002, which was a statute or whatever that came out as a result of 9/11, where it says that if you are a security company and you go to the DHS and you get trained on certain procedures and various other criteria that they've set out, you then become certified. And if you have a anti-terrorism certification, then you are the liability. If an event occurs and you're sued, then your liability is severely limited to what your insurance will cover. Okay. Now, some of the elements of this, for this to stick, is, and this is the main one, is that in the Safety Act, and I actually went and read it, it says that the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security must declare the event a terrorist attack. Okay, it must meet the definition of a terror attack, and the Secretary of Homeland Security has to declare it so. And that's interesting because, as far as I know, that LVMPD and the FBI both indicated, because early on ISIS tried to take credit for it, and early on they were asked, both Rouse, the FBI special agent in charge in Vegas, and also Lombardo, the sheriff of LVM of Metro, they were both asked about ISIS, the connection to ISIS, and they both indicated they didn't find any connection to ISIS, And Rouse was very quick to say this is not terrorism. So this lawsuit is very interesting. I don't know how they're going to stretch it. I don't know. It's a reach, in my opinion, because what they're claiming is the concert, the venue, they had contracted because see, Mandalay Bay owns that property. They contracted with Live Nation to host it, to put it on, to manage it, and they also contracted with CSC to, those are the guys in the yellow jackets who are, these guys are huge. The security company, they have, they have contracts all over the world. You see them at a lot of, pro sporting events, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. I mean, they're all over. So under that umbrella is where MGM is trying to sue. Now, I don't know how they're going to make the connection between the security guards who were just responsible for the venue and Mandalay Bay, which is where they claim the shooting occurred. I don't see how those security guards that were guarding the venue have any authority or any responsibility over Mandalay Bay, where the shooting was actually, the shooting actually occurred. But, as well as I do, there are very, very, very creative attorneys out there, and I'm sure at some point in time we'll hear. Now, one of the things that I wonder is that once we get the FBI's final report, will they conclude that this was a terrorist attack? That's the question. We don't know the answer, but we should have it by, Rouse has indicated that he will give us their final report by the anniversary date, which is October 1st.
Again, this is Scott Pollack, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Thanks again for watching another edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report, coming to you live or almost live from the capital of the Midwest Coast, Chicago, Illinois, USA. That is all.